So welcome everyone to this. I'm talking the Teanga Seminar Series. So I'm happy to welcome Dr. Éric Ferrand from Boston College, whose work is on computational linguistics and automatic speech recognition, particularly for underrepresented languages, which of course is very relevant to the kind of work that we do in the Teanga project. And he's going to talk about a very interesting idea, but the term low resource doesn't just mean a lack of data, but also looking at some of the differences in linguistic diversity and some of the things that come into making low resource languages. So Eric, please, when you're ready.
Yep, absolutely. Let me. So hello everybody, and thank you for having me. And also I want to thank you, Éric, for recommending me for this talk. My name is Éric Ferrand. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Boston College, Massachusetts, and I'm working at the intersection of linguistic technologies and documentary linguistics with a particular focus on speech processing. I chose this title, low resource is not the only problem, since the term low resource has been overly used to describe scenarios that are widely different and have their specific challenges. I did not make this presentation very technical, and I guess my purpose here is very much clearing up the ground and present the questions and challenges that are inherent to technologies applied to field linguistics. I'm going to start with a lengthy introduction, defining a few terms. I'm going to ask some questions about the relevance of the field. And as I mentioned before, my research is mostly about speech, so I'm going to spend time presenting the application of speech recognition for field linguistics, and finally the few projects that my colleagues and myself have been working on. So what is low resource? I put that here and we're going to answer this later. I made these charts to summarize the point of Len Schwartz in 2022. Among about 9,000 abstracts from the ACL anthology, which is the main anthology for natural language processing, 83% of publications do not mention any languages, assuming English as a language of focus. About 8.3% Indo-European, French, Spanish, Hindi, German, etc. 4.5% Sino-Tibetan, and I assume that most of the article are mostly about Mandarin Chinese, and less than 4% focuses on other languages. That still includes major languages like Japanese, Korean, Arabic, Turkish, etc. The same kind of consultation can be made in other fields. For example, psycholinguistic, where English is still the language that dominates, as well as maybe the top 20 most powerful languages in the world. So what is low resource? From a language technology perspective, low resource is a language for which we do not have the resources necessary to build language technologies. For example, for automatic translation, these results will be sentences in Japanese, let's say, aligned with a corresponding translation in French. For a system like ChatGPT, this would be a set of prompts with possible answers. And for speech synthesis or speech recognition, that would be audio segments aligned with their corresponding transcription. Nowadays, research and tools about language processing have been taken more and more space in today's society, like speech recognition, language understanding, automatic translation, and so on. And this kind of made me wonder, what is the concrete use behind these technologies? Well, this is Catherine. Catherine needs to submit her PhD dissertation in a couple of months. Catherine has been trying to write her freaking manuscript for the past 3 months already. Thankfully, she has available a bunch of writing assistants that are going to suggest that her writing is not the greatest, and maybe she can benefit some rephrasing. Also, maybe you're a medical doctor and you are in a constant rush and you're using a vocal assistant to dictate your medical prescription for your patients. Maybe you are deaf or hard of hearing and you're using the auto caption feature of YouTube. Or you are too lazy to check the weather through the window and you prefer ask your home assistant at home. All these technologies are available for a handful of languages. We do not have a specific number as it depends on the task, but it might vary from 20 to 100 languages. All these other languages are considered as low resource, and there are about more than 6,000 of them, roughly. I want to have a closer look on these high resource languages to see what they have in common. I have selected those 8 languages that are spread on 6 continents. They are all known as first or second languages in several countries. Additionally, they have a large range of use. These languages are spoken in international trades, in the media, education, the arts, religion, science, politics, tourism, and of course the private sphere and the familial or social settings. These languages have a socio-economical value that trigger the need to create language technologies for them. For example, I can give like a historical reminder. This is the first instance of machine translation that happened during the Cold War. Funding had been made to create the first translation machine that was able to translate some sentences from English to Russian, which makes sense considering the political context. And what about all these other languages? Where are they spoken? How are they used? Are they all equal? Do they have the same needs, the same supports, or the same opportunities? These are 2 examples of low-resource languages, Punjabi and Tiwi. Punjabi is an Indo-Aryan language spoken in the Punjab region in India. It is the official language of Punjab, but is also recognized in some districts in Bangladesh or Rajasthan province. Punjabi has about 290 million speakers. And on the other side, we have Tiwi. Tiwi is an isolate. It is an Australian Aboriginal language spoken mostly in Tiwi Islands in Northern Australia. It is spoken by roughly 2,000 people. So just looking at the 2 examples, we already see some drastic differences in terms of speakers, the number of speakers, in terms of recognition. Punjabi is known as the first or second language, mostly in Punjab. It is used in Punjab in some media, arts, education, politics, as Punjab, the Punjab province also is its own government. It is also used in the private sphere, of course, in religion. Tiwi is almost exclusively used as first language and used in the private sphere and in the art and tourism to satisfy scholars or rich people in quest of a cultural experience. Different language, different reality, different range of use. This is the EDGES classification that assesses the vitality of a language based on social economical factors. We're going to have at the top international languages like English, French, Spanish, then national languages that have less international representation, like Latvian, Hungarian, then provincial, that would be Punjabi, for example, but also Catalan or Cantonese. Wider communication, Wolof is a good example. So it's used by several language community in the northwest of the African continent. And going down to the level 5, 6, 7, we have all the indigenous languages, including Tiwi, that have a lack of institutional support, but are still spoken. So why does language use matter in terms of language technologies? The range of language use is highly influencing the amount of resources that can be found in a language, and therefore the opportunity for the creation of language technologies. Additionally, it also conditions the need of a given language for a given technology. For instance, in Punjabi, you can find educational resources, official texts, audiobooks, literature, movies, poetry, song, etc. In Tiwi, most of the resources created are made by scholars, linguists, archaeologists, anthropologists, but also rangers and missionaries, like the creation of audio recording of the Bible, translation of the Bible as well, or religious texts in general. Why does it matter? Well, let me talk to you about Dipti. Dipti is from Pune, in the Maharashtra region of India. Dipti is a native her native language is Marathi, and she has learned Hindi and English at school. She got accepted in the prestigious engineering program in ITT Ropar in Punjab. And while the program she's in is fully in English, most of her classmates are Punjabi speakers. Dipti finds herself in a situation where language technology could help her learning the language, for instance. She might want closed caption to better understand the local news in Punjabi. We have here potential needs and some resources to satisfy those needs. Now let's talk about Stuart. Stuart is from Pilangimpi, a settlement in Tiwi Island. He's based mostly in Pilangimpi, but moved throughout the year in other locations in Tiwi and the Australian Northern Territory. His native language is Tiwi, and he's learned English as a kid. He speaks Tiwi at home, English to non-Aboriginal folks, and either Aboriginal English or Creole to non-Tiwi Aboriginal speakers. There are no obvious need to write in Tiwi. A very low number of people have an actual need to learn the language. Here we have neither the need or the opportunity to create speech technology. It's also important to mention that most Tiwi people are bilingual, that non-Aboriginal people need a permit to go to Tiwi, and in the island you don't have much reception and the internet access is really limited. To get back to the classification, I want to draw a line between level 4 and level 5, which determine the institutional support of that a language might receive. At 4, we have a standard way of writing the language and educational support. Below that, we don't have this kind of support, and then we have a drastic limitation of the resources available. I want to talk a little bit about speech recognition. Speech recognition is a task that consists in converting speech recording into text. Traditionally, these were the components that we have. We have a waveform. We extracted from the features acoustic vectors from this waveform. We built an acoustic model that model the distribution of the sound. It basically says we have all the samples. What are the samples to correspond to the sound A, the sound P, the sound U, and so on. Then we have a language model that predict the most likely concatenation of words. A lexicon that convert the phonetic representation to an orthographic representation. And then the decoding, which would be a basic Bayesian formula, what is the maximum likelihood to have a given sequence of words given the sequence of sounds that we have. This modelization requires a lot of data to model all the different elements in the acoustic and language model. More recently, we switched to more performant architectures based on neural networks named transformers. This is an example of Whisper, probably the most efficient architecture today. It takes your speech features. Here we have a log-mail spectrogram. It's encoded and then decode the hidden representation one word at a time. Very large models are being released that offer huge potential for our low-resource languages. These kind of models start with the assumption that a very limited number of sounds, there's a very limited number of sound a human being can produce. We produce fricatives, plosive, nasals, etc. And all these sounds are finite. You won't have a language that's gonna have a drastic sound system that's gonna be different from language that we have extensive documentation on. Of course, some of these sounds are more spread than others. Almost all languages in the world is gonna have some and M sound, some B sound, and maybe a very limited number going to have clicks or adjectives. From this assumption, we can say, what if you take all the languages that we have available and we learn how to model those sounds regardless of the language? The second assumption that we have is that a writing system represents the language in a fairly consistent way across languages. For example, we have this Italian word that's going to be pronounced by Italian people as schiaffo. If I'm a French speaker, I might read this word as schiaffo, or if I'm an English speaker, schiaffo, African schiaffo, Polish schiaffo. You have a very predicted way to pronounce those words. Another example, this is a Polish word that mean rat. If you see these words, you might want to pronounce it skór, czur, sur, but it's very unlikely that you're going to see this word and you're going to think it's pronounced szpok. And the actual pronunciation is szczur, something like that. I'm not a Polish speaker. Of course, it's not universal rules, and you're going to have some extreme cases, like this name that is not pronounced Siaban, but it's pronounced Chauvin, or this French word that is not pronounced OCU, but is pronounced oiseau. Also, it is true for the Latin alphabet, the Syriac alphabet, maybe the Hindi writing systems, but of course, you're going to have cases in which it doesn't work. For example, the Han alphabet is going to be pronounced a very different way if it's used in Japanese or Chinese. Following these assumptions, we build very large language models where the basic information about human sound production is written down. Then the weights of these large models can be adapted for specific languages. And doing so, the needs of data have been drastically reduced, allowing the creation of speech recognition systems that require only maybe an hour of annotated speech. And just like that, Dipti can watch subtitle video in Punjabi. But what about stewards? I spent my PhD in Northern Australia where I tried to see to what extent speech technologies make sense in the billing community in Northern Australia. Turns out it doesn't really make sense. Nobody was like, yes, we need that. They all had issues, desires, expectation that did not really align with what speech technologies that do not really align with the speech technology that were designed in the language. So why are we even designing those technologies? Why do we want like a speech recognition model in being Gunwalk? Well, the answer is linguists. Linguists are the one community that have been asking for speech technologies for those languages. The main work of the linguists consists in to collect some data, record speech collections, then transcribe the data, and then the transcription of this data become the new data and they're gonna perform some translation or analysis on this data. It is of course an oversimplification, but this idea of transcription as a very long and tedious task is a real problem that are being assessed, and speech recognition has been seen as a way to assess this process. So not to replace it, we apply the speech recognition system to the collected recording and then provide automatic transcription that can be corrected afterwards. Linguists as scholars that are going to collect data for academic purpose, and the data collected is therefore very conditioned by this purpose. Which means that the ASR system that designed nowadays might not adequately respond to the need of the linguists. Typically, two main challenges can be explored. The first one would be, the first challenge is the data collected really fits the input that is expected by modern speech recognition system? And second, is the type of language on which the linguists are working on fit the languages that are included in these modern speech recognition models. The first question that we want to ask is what kind of data is expected from a speech recognition system? And the simple answer is speech segments allow with orthographic transcription. But the real answer is monolingual segments of 30 seconds or less with a standard orthography and preferably not too much background noise or overlapping speech. Then how do we know that system work? The main idea is that the words, and by words I mean a token separated by two spaces, is the word detected by the system correspond to the word in a given Go transcription. Did the system detect words that don't exist in this Go transcription? Did the system omitted a word that really exists, or did the system misspelled a word? I have two main experience of fieldwork. The first one was in Benin Country in Australian Northern Territory, and the second one is in Guadeloupe Islands in the Caribbean. The two language community, those two language communities are wildly opposed. They have a completely different socio-political situation. They are situated at the opposite from each other, and yet the way the data collection was conducted was very similar. To give an example of the fieldwork in Guadeloupe, in a single trip, the linguists collected interviews with one or more participants, and the interview were conducted either in Creole or French. They collected elicited speech from videos from generally one participant at a time. Grammaticality judgments that would be recording that is made both in French and Creole with one or more participants, and guided tours with one main speaker that would interact with all the participants either in French or Creole. So already looking at this data, we don't have the classic data that is expected from a classic speech recognition system. And to illustrate that, I selected a few recordings I hope you're gonna hear. So this is two examples of two languages and two recordings that might be taken as input by a classic speech recognition system. This is an example in Gunwok. And this example in Sekotian, a language from Canada.
It's a Takalux training.
So in those two examples, you can hear that the language is very slow, is very controlled, is very, if you know the language, very easy to get the different language information. But this is the data that we really have. This is a real recording that I made in Australia. And here the collaborator focuses on producing knowledge. He was telling a story and he wasn't really interested in to produce language data. This is a second example that being collected in Guadeloupe.
It's not this for me.
Did you ask him? Est-ce que vous demandez, j'étais ça about?
So this is an example of grammaticality judgment. So it is an interview, this is a discussion that's going to be conducted generally in a dominant language and the language we're trying to document. Here in an extreme case where the linguist and the speaker are talking in Creole, in French, and in English to produce this kind of information. So we do not produce language data. We produce recording, we produce knowledge about the language. And the last example. So in this recording, we are not interested at producing like language data. We're interested at see how the language is actually used in a natural situation. So here we have chatter, we have in distinct speech, we have laughter, we have people that are talking onto each other. This kind of data is very hard to process by a classic speech recognition system. The second challenge is about the type of language we have. This is the distribution of the morphological typology we have in the two main speech recognition model, Whisper and XLSR. And you can see from the language used for the training, none of them are polysynthetic. What a polysynthetic language means. So a polysynthetic language is a language that is highly synthetic, where a single word construction can contain a huge amount of information. So this example in Yupik, a language spoken in the Bering Strait between Alaska and Russia. So this is a very long word that can be separated in different morphemes, and you can see that it can be translated in a full sentence in English. This is a map of a rough map. I'm not sure it's like very like accurate and scientific, so don't take it too seriously. But this is roughly the distribution of the languages, the morphological typology spread in the world. You're going to have isolating languages or analytical languages like English or Chinese, where the grammatical information going to be very contained by the order of the words. Flexional languages like French, Spanish, Italian, where the form of the word will change to change the grammatical information in the sentence. For example, mangio in Italian, I'm eating, or mangiavo, I was eating, so the form change. Agglutinative languages like Turkish, where little morpheme going to be put at the end of the word to change the grammatical function of the words. And finally, polysynthetic languages I mentioned before that are going to be almost exclusively spoken by indigenous communities in the Americas, in the Bering Strait, and in Northern Australia. So from here, the question I want to ask are, to what extent speech recognition can be used to transcribe fieldwork data, how robust those systems are to deal with multilingual recordings, and how robust ASR is going to be for morphologically complex languages. The first work that have been conducted was meant to explore a simple question. Does ASR work on fieldwork data? We had one speech recognition model available that has been trained with monolingual recording in Creole from Guadeloupe. And we applied it to a recording created by another team of linguists. The recording we applied the model on was spontaneous and was meant to collect, it was recorded to collect interaction in Creole. So the recording contains monolingual information in Creole, but also in distinct chatter, Creole that would contain code switch segment in French, discussion in English, and discussion in Creole. So we applied the speech recognition system on this recording, and this is what we got. Overall, the system did not perform well. It was pretty bad. So you can see that we have, from this graph, we have very high error rates. And the error made were pretty logical. When you apply a system training Creole to transcribe segment pronounced in French or English, that won't perform well. If you're gonna give it to try to transcribe very noisy chunk of speech, then it's gonna perform well neither. So the results kind of make sense. But from this first experiment, we kind of realized that even though some transcription were not explodable at all, a substantial amount was very decent. Some segment with no transcription errors at all. Less than 50% had like a very low error rate. And beside the segment that were correctly transcribed, we've been told by linguists that using an SR system to transcribe noisy speech segments could help understand, like hear better the content of these recordings. The second study we conducted was about grammaticality judgment. So this is an example of real recording that we had. I translated the segment that were initially in French to English. So il poussait moins ça, can we say that? Il poussait moins ça. Does insert it a width. Wait, do you say moins ça in your sentence? So here we have a challenge. If we apply a speech recognition system trained in Creole, it will try to transcribe the Creole, but will miss all the French. Inversely, if we try to apply speech recognition in French, you're gonna miss all the Creole. However, both information are crucial. Like all language are important in this recording. So what did we do? We took the two recordings, 20 minutes each. We transcribed both recording, and we trained a speech recognition system with one of the recording. So transcribing the Creole as Creole, the French as French, and we fed the speech recognition system as if the recording was a single language. And this is what we got. We realized that the model, so we compare the results with the model not fine-tuned at all, so enforced in French for the system to transcribe everything in French. And then we apply the model fine-tuned on the grammatical judgment data. The system in French performed well enough because it is trained with a huge amount of data to transcribe French, so it will get the French, but of course gonna miss all the segments in Creole. Fine-tuning the model with, again, only 20 minutes of speech, we see that the general word error rate will decrease by 10%, but mostly half of the segments that are pronounced in Creole are gonna be, more than half gonna be properly transcribed. Looking at some example of transcription, you can see that the model tried very hard to transcribe the Creole segments, trying to infer the pronunciations. For example, the segments say en carail blanc, gonna try to make en carail blanc. So making up the transcription, those two words don't exist in French, and blanc is a real French word. This example as well, en cas content is just going to match the pronunciation of existing French words. Same thing here. Le verbe bail devient beau devant moi. Le verbe bail devient beau devant moi, with a reference being the verbe bail devient bon devant moi. So it works. It gets the pronunciation, and it messes up sometime the orthography based on its isolation on French, but roughly it's working. And the last study that we perform, I don't have strong results because it's still a work in progress. They're going to be submitted soon, but we try to see how speech recognition systems work on morphologically complex languages, comparing the performances of polysyntactic languages with iterating language. And we want to check a key aspect of those languages, since the possible combination of morpheme for these languages is very high. We have a high chance to have models that gonna see a word that they've never seen before. So we want to see how robust this kind of system can be for unknown words, and do the system can infer easily the pronunciation of the words for those languages. So this is the last study that we conducted, and I'm gonna conclude quickly for the takeaway from what I just said, to summarize a little bit. So the extent of the use of a language and its social political situation will have an influence on the needs and opportunity of the language technologies. Not every community is gonna need speech recognition. Some of them might want that. Some of them won't see any point. And the main reason to create those technologies are really for linguists. They're going to use the technology, they're going to produce the data to create these technologies, and therefore going to create a lot of challenges related to the kind of data that is produced. So as I said, the type of data that is produced by linguists is not completely aligned with the current way speech recognition system works and how the research around speech recognition is currently conducted. And therefore, there are a lot of things to understand about how the system actually work and how can we make them better to transcribe this kind of information. And this is all I have for you today. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any question, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Great, and thanks a lot. It's a very interesting talk. I'll open the floor to questions. Okay. One thing I find very interesting is in this kind of viewpoint, and compared to a lot of the work we're doing, is we're looking a lot at historical languages, where obviously, you know, this idea that the kind of technologies you need will be very different. So of course, it's a case where automatic speech recognition is not very important for most historical languages. Of course, there is no audio records.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm wondering, you know, in terms of historical languages, what kind of technologies do you think you would, you know, how would that change how we focus on technologies if we start thinking about historical languages also as under-resourced languages?
So how the technology can be adapted for historical languages?
Yeah.
I do see a lot of challenges. So for example, just to talk about like personal thing, actually, my mother just defended her PhD 2 hours ago, and she was working on translation and a manuscript from the 13th century, written in Languedoc, or like ancient Languedoc. And I can see how technology can be adapted for topic. How can you apply a part of speech tagger for an orthography that's not completely fixed? How can you maybe create like a optical character recognition system to automatically convert manuscript to a digital version? This is very narrow topic, not a very niche topic, and I don't think that the technology is really ready for that. But it's definitely a question to dig, I assume, but honestly I don't have a clear answer of what direction can we going towards for ancient and historical languages.
Okay, thanks. Your mother's just on her PhD, you said.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Never too late to do a PhD to study, eh? Super. Are there some other questions? Okay, great. So in that case, I'll just thank Éric again. A very interesting talk and very interesting work. You know, I think there's a lot of challenges of working with these kind of with speech recognition, these kind of languages, and it's very important, I think, to highlight, you know, what we're building with language technologies is not just build the same technology out for, you know, all 7,000 languages that are supposedly to exist in the world. You know, we should think about, you know, how the technologies work and how we involve stakeholders in. It makes it a very interesting talk. Okay, right. I'll say thank you, and I think we can close the